In 1949, China was one of the most poorest and the most broken countries in the world, devastated by war, humiliation, famine, and economic collapse. Millions struggled just to survive, and most foreign leaders didn't believe China could ever rise beyond hardship. Yet today, China is the world's second largest economy, reshapes global trade, leads in manufacturing, and stands as one of the most powerful nations on earth. How did this happen? Was it destiny, luck? No, China's rise was the result of hard choices, major reforms, painful failures, bold policies, and centuries of history that builds a nation stronger than anyone expected. In this video, we will trace the deep, dramatic journey from poverty to power, from people, ideas, policies, upheavals, and the transformation that defined modern China. So let's start from the beginning. When we look at the Chinas today, bridges, skyscraper, high-speed rail, bustling factories, dense cities, and global influence, it's almost impossible to imagine that less than a century ago, this great civilization was broken and struggling to survive. In the first half of the 20th century, China was a place of civil war, foreign invasion, and deep poverty. In the 1930s, communist forces were hunted by enemies and forced into a retreat across the thousands of miles of rugged terrain, mountains, rivers, deserts, and starvation, did not stop them. Many died, but those who survived learned endurance, unity, and discipline. This perilous journey helped build a mindset that suffering could be endured to achieve long term strength, mindset that later guided the country's leadership under Mao Zedong and shaped China's revolutionary spirit. Modern China was officially born on October 1, 1949, with the creation of the People's Republic of China. Mao, as a chairman of the Communist Party, held ultimate authority and began reshaping a country that was overwhelmingly rural, illiterate, and poor. Industry was weak, farms produced little extra food, and millions were hungry. From 1949 to 1957, the country's first priority was survival and stability. Land reforms broke the old landlord system and redistributed lands to millions of peasants, giving them a sense of empowerment for the first time. Banks, factories, and major industries were nationalized, meaning the government took control with the goal of rebuilding the economy and protecting independence. This era was not about the wealth, it was keeping people alive, feeding them, providing basic needs and education, as well as unifying a fractured nation. In 1958, Mao launched one of his most ambitious policies called the Great Leap Forward, a campaign to transform China into a modern industrial power almost overnight. Mao believed that with China's massive population, even small villages could contribute to industrial growth. The plan asked farmers to organize into large communes and produce agriculture surplus to fuel rapid industrial expansion. Backyard steel furnaces popped up in villages where peasants were encouraged to produce metal using basic tools. However, the plan failed catastrophically. Poor planning, unrealistic targets, and unscientific methods and natural disaster combined to cause one of the deadliest famines in history. Millions died of starvation and the economy suffered deeply. This was a painful lesson in how not to industrialize that reform without careful planning can backfire. Following this, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution in 1966, a decade of political upheaval aimed at purifying communist ideology. Tens of millions of young people were mobilized as Red Guards. Schools and universities were disrupted, intellectuals were persecuted, and political purges became common. Instead of creating progress, the Cultural Revolution undermined expertise, weakened institutions, and destabilized society. For ordinary people, it was a time of fear, confusion, and economic stagnation. Yet, even amid chaos, China continued building basic infrastructure, railroad, electric grids, hospitals, and schools, foundations that would support future growth. By the time Mao died in 1976, China was unified and independent, but its economy was weak and isolated from the global community. Everything changed after Mao's death with the rise of a new leader, and that is Deng Xiaoping. Deng was not a radical ideologue like Mao, but a practical reformer who believed that slogan did not fill stomachs. He famously said, "It doesn't matter whether the policy is labeled capitalist or socialist, what matters is whether it produces result or not." Under his leadership from 1978 onward, China entered a new dramatic era of change called reform and opening up. The very first step in this new era was agricultural reform. Deng, dismantled the collective farming system and introduced the household responsibility system, a policy that allowed individual farming families to work their own plots of land and keep or sell surplus food after meeting state obligation. This was transformational because it created personal incentives for farmers, leading to a surge in food production, higher incomes, and a steep drop in rural poverty. In many villages, families who once struggled to feed themselves suddenly had an extra income and hope. Building on this initial success, China began to open its door to foreign investment and trade. The key tool for this was the establishment of the special economic zones, small region, where foreign companies were invited to build factories, create jobs, and transfer technologies. These zones were experimental labs for economic reforms. Cities like Shenzhen, once a quiet fishing community, become a hotbed of rapid industrial growth. Think of these zones as control windows into the world economy. They showed China what could work without risking the entire country. Gradually, this successful experience spread nationwide. China's strategy under Deng Xiaoping was not to overhaul everything at once. It was a controlled experimentation. China's strategies under Deng Xiaoping was not to overhaul everything at once. It was controlled experimentation. Instead of shock therapy, which other countries used and which often caused economic collapse, China used a dual track approach. Strategic sectors like energy, steel, and transport remained under government direction, while manufacturing, trade, and consumer goods were allowed to be driven by market forces. This gradual shift balanced stability with growth, and it worked. Between 1986 and 1993, China launched a massive poverty reduction initiative known as the 8-7 program, with a clear goal: lift 80 million people out of poverty in 7 years. This was achieved by developing rural industries, expanding urban job opportunities, and encouraging entrepreneurship. Small enterprises sprouted in villages and towns, created jobs and boosting incomes. The economic machine that had once barely functioned was now moving steadily forward. In the early 90s, China faced internal debates about continuing reforms. To reinforce his vision, Deng Xiaoping embarked on what became known as his Southern Tour, where he visited the southern provinces and declared that reform must continue and expand. This gave fresh momentum to China's opening to the world's economy. The result was extraordinary. GDP growth rates soared, millions of jobs were created, and income level rose for tens of millions of citizens. China's global engagement accelerated further when it joins the major international institutions. Over time, it became a member of organizations such as the International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization, and other global economic bodies, which integrated it deeply into the global economy and trade network. Under leaders like Chiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, China adopted its reforms for broader goals: stabilizing economy, expanding infrastructure, investing in education, and fostering technological development. Massive highways, high-speed rail networks, modern ports, skyscrapers, and universities become symbol of this new China. Educational reforms sought to reverse the damage of earlier decades, improve technical skills, and prepare millions of young people for modern workforce. Throughout this journey, China also pursued an independent foreign policy of peace, believing that economic development required a stable international environment. It avoided major military confrontation, focused on diplomacy, and supported a world where power and influence were shared, not dominated by a single nation. China faced serious regional and global challenges, but its approach was rooted in cooperation and strategic patience. By the early 21st century, China had completed one of the most remarkable transformations in recorded history. It rose from a poor, war-torn agrarian society to a connected, industrial, urbanized, and technologically advancing global power. Hundreds of millions were lifted out of poverty. Infrastructure reliably reshaped everyday's life. China emerged as the world's second largest economy, a leader in global trade, investment, and manufacturing. This rise was not sudden, it was not accidental. It came from decades of careful planning, gradual reform, learning from failure, and leadership that valued stability while embracing innovation. Now, let's leave you with this final reflection. China Rise reminds us that true power isn't built by quick shortcuts or blind imitation. It's built through long term thinking, disciplined experimentation, and the courage to adopt when the world changes. If you find this video insightful, make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you want more clear, honest explanation of history and the world affairs. Thanks for watching.